So, we are back. We are continuing with Alex Legler, and he's going to talk about security in Gentoo. He's been involved in the Gentoo security team for many years, and I believe he's special about it.
Okay, thanks, Theo. So as you said, my name is Alex. I'm going to talk to you about how the Gentoo security team works to keep our distribution safe, or our distribution's packages safe, and what other things the distribution does to ensure the security of your system. So first of all, we're going to look a bit into how open source security in general works, or how open source operating system security, to be specific, works, how we in Gentoo do it, what processes we use, what tools we have, and what tools you can use to verify the state of the packages you have in your system. First of all, I've been a developer for 2009, involved in many things. I started with Ruby packaging. I did some PR work. I do some infra work now, and I also do security. I'm currently one of the two leads of the team, and I brought you the wiki. So why is this important? Why is tracking security issues important? Why is making all the fuss about it important? These numbers here are the numbers of security issues we handled per year in Gentoo, or rather that were filed in the specific year in Gentoo. We all started out in 2004, where we started the whole advisory program, the whole security handling program, and since then the numbers of bugs we track haven't really decreased, except for this dent in 2010 that I can't really explain. But we're steadily going at around 600 to 700 issues a year that affect your system's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So first of all, how do we get to know about these issues? This all starts with the people who tinker with software, who actively look for security issues and stumble upon them and report them to the respective software authors. They can go about this in two ways. There's one thing that is called responsible disclosure, and there's the other thing that you call full disclosure. In responsible disclosure, what the vulnerability researcher or finder, discoverer does is they talk to the author of the software, or via proxy talk to the distribution, and they talk to the author of the software and inform them about the issue in a private matter. That's the important part here. Authors get some time to develop a fix. That time is usually around 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes when you have a large amount of software, or even several vendors to coordinate, you take considerably longer. Thanks. So what happens when these 4 to 6 weeks are over is you either get a so-called coordinate release, which means that the vendor of the software plus the distributions containing the software push out updates at the same time. The other way it can go is you can go the full disclosure route. This happens usually when upstream and the vulnerability researcher don't get to the same terms. Oftentimes you have upstream saying, well, we don't consider this to be an issue. We're not patching this. Or we don't like the way you talk to us. There's often personality and some people's egos involved, sadly. And this is when things get nasty and go the full disclosure route, which is an immediate public release. So either it's immediate or it's after a disagreement that all the details about the vulnerability are released. And this is not what you want in the interest of users as well as software vendors, as it puts quite some pressure on them, and of course makes users susceptible to people abusing this information, which you could call a script kiddie, just taking an exploit and running it against a set of machines, and you don't really need that. So there are several channels how this information gets to us. First of all, what you maybe know as well as the CVE project, which is the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures List, which is a project that aims to create an identifier for each and every vulnerability that exists in a software product. And we use a tool, which I'll show you later, that tracks the CVE database and allows us to map Gentoo software to CVEs. Important as well are aggregation services, as they take one step out of the information process. They already have all the information available. This is Secuni or Packet Storm, for instance, where they already put up some additional information for us to use, which of course we double check. Then we are working with several countries' CRTs. For instance, the American CERT-CC, which we are affiliated with, or the open source CRT, the OCERT, which is led by a former Gentoo developer as well. So they work with researchers as well and give us information. Upstreams, of course, work with us directly. They inform us. We are on the lists for several things, for instance, Samba. Then we have several mailing lists specifically for security. Most known is osc12, which is something that many interested people are subscribed to. This is the common place for specifically open source security issues that are public. The very nice thing about this list is that it has a rather high signal-to-noise ratio, so we have very dense information on there. A little less dense, yet still sometimes useful, are full disclosure or bug track, which contain information about all issues, be it commercial, be it open source software. So you have to do quite some filtering there, and this can be a bit tedious. We can also be part of a coordinated release, as I explained earlier. So if we say, okay, we'll get our e-build the same date you get your updated software out, then we'll know about it that way. And also we look for other security teams, what they do. So we're subscribed to several bug trackers as well. And from my feeling, it's especially Red Hat that we get information from. And of course, last but not least, users and developers directly file bugs for us. So when we have the information about an issue, and it is not already a bug, our job is to file a bug so that we have a tracking instrument, that we know what state the bug is in, and we get all the people involved in fixing the bug to know what they have to do. So after we file the bug, it goes to the maintainer. Maintainers can basically decide on 2 or 3 routes how the issue is going to be resolved. The first way is you bump to a new software version. This is what we usually do. Gentoo, as a rolling release distribution, does seldomly backport. We only backport when we, for instance, have a 2.6 slot and a 3.0 slot of a software, and the 3.0 slot is not stable. So in that case, we would go ahead and backport a fix or use another 2.6 point release to fix the issue. But most of the times, we're just bumping to the next version. Should there be no updated version available, this is the case when you have ceased upstream activity, for instance, we're going to call last writes on the package and remove it. After the package has been updated, we'll give the torchlight to the architecture teams, which are going to stabilize the package if it was already stable before. If not, then stabilization is of course not needed. And the cleanup comes next, which means to remove all known vulnerable versions of a package from the tree. The idea of this is that we don't want users to accidentally install old known vulnerable packages from the tree, and these should be removed or at least hard masked to avoid this problem. And the final step, if we have a stable package, we're going to decide if we are releasing an advisory for this. There are a few rules that I'm going to show you that we use to decide on whether or not to send a proper advisory. One of the measures we use for determining whether to send an advisory or not is how many people we estimate have installed this package. So how many users are potentially affected. We have basically 4 categories. We take system packages, which are the ones that you find in your stage 3 already when installing. Then we call a common package, things that are on more than 5% of installations, or at least that we estimate are on more than 5% of installations. Here we have common things like Apache, PHP, and so on. Then we go on and separate from that the marginal packages, which are less than 5%. And we have a category for packages that have never been stable. When we look at these categories, we also determine what configuration is needed from the user to be susceptible to the issue. You can either be susceptible in the default configuration or if you use a specific feature of the software and thus have manually configured it. So depending on how widespread the package is and what configuration you have, you get a rating of either A, B, C, or a tilde. A is the most severe one, and the tilde is the will not get an advisory because not stable. So this is the first measure that we have. And the second measure is how severe the issue itself is. There we have a rating that goes from 0 to 4, where we take a remote root compromise. So you, as an attacker, have the ability to gain root rights on a remote machine without the user doing anything. So just by exploiting a server or whatever. Then we have you actively, as an attacker, you actively compromising user account, or as a local user, getting root rights in the category 1. After that, if you get the user to open a file in a program and that file is specially crafted, or you get the user to open a website or whatever, and you gain access via that, that's category 2. And for global service impairments like denial of service, data loss, or leaking a complete database, we give rating of 3. And for the rest, this includes cross-site scripting and SQL injections because it's just so common in web applications, and other information leaks that are not as severe as a full database leak get category 4. So we have a letter, A, B, C, or tilde, plus a 0 to 4, which is the rating. And pretty much for everything in the A category, we do send an advisory. For B, we send advisories up to B2. For B3 and 4, we'll vote on it. So we have 2 security people deciding on whether this issue in particular is severe enough to warrant an advisory or not. For C packages, we always decide, and for tilde packages, we never send an advisory because we only cover the stable tree. Together with this rating, so if we have a marginal package that has a remote code execution and is currently being stabled, we're adding a tag for the status of the bug. This is what we put into the whiteboard field. And this is our main information on how far the bug is and how severe the bug is. So we have several stages of a bug. So we can either be informed about an issue, but we do not have a fix. So we're waiting on upstream. That's the upstream status. Then we can be facing the question, do we backport or do we wait for an updated e-build? That sometimes happens because you get the patch before you get a new upstream release. That's where we say, okay, either we wait for upstream or we put an e-build into the tree. Or we can have the case, we have an updated version and we just need to package it and bump it. That's the e-build status. After that, while we're waiting for architectures to complete all stabilization, we're in the stable state. And should we have a rating of this B3, 4 stuff where we need to decide whether or not we're going to send an advisory, we're in this GLSA question mark state. And after we've decided that and the bug is handled, we say, okay, either it's no GLSA or it's GLSA. And after that, the bug is closed. Now, how many issues do we actually have in the several categories? So how severe are the issues we're dealing with? These are statistics from 2011, where you can see that the most packages we deal with are the common packages that we say, okay, these have more than 5% of systems installed and in default configuration, like I showed you on the slide before that. And there are actually very few issues in the lesser known packages, which might be related to the fact that people, of course, are looking for issues in known packages more often than they do in lesser known packages. Also, we have these 85 non-stable packages that we do as an additional favor, so to say. I know that in Debian they have a separate security team for testing branches. So in Gentoo we have like one security team who do this testing stuff on the side. The issue severity is a bit more evenly distributed. We have most issues being rather low severity, and we luckily last year didn't have an active remote root compromise. So that's something we're glad about. So we've seen the process that we use. We tag our bugs. We give them ratings. We give the software that is affected ratings to know how long we should take to fix the issue. So we have a guideline on how long we should be taking to fix an issue. Obviously an A0, which is like system program remote root, should be fixed as soon as possible, and we have a target delay of I think 2 days to do that, and these go up to I think about a week or 2 to 3 weeks for C4 packages or C4 package issue combinations. What we use to keep track of all this are several tools. First of all, this is one that we only have had in this form for about a year now. This is the CVE tool, which lists all the common vulnerabilities and exposures from the CVE project. And we look at this incoming queue. It's like a bug tracker or like a request tracker that we go through on a daily basis to see what new CVEs have come up for our packages and assign them to bugs. This is an important step towards getting CVE compatible, which is something that is one of our future goals for the project. I'll elaborate on that in a moment. The CVE tool is part of our magical utility that helps us draft advisories. This is also the new version that we've had for a year now. Before that, we've had something that was written in 2005, I think, and had a very funny limitation that when we linked 50 references in an advisory, that it would stop working, which is not a good thing. If you look at the current Mozilla or Chrome update release, you will see sometimes hundreds of CVEs linked into them. So that's a problem. But we've luckily fixed this. So we have this utility that helps us, first of all, track the requests. So when we decided on an advisory, when we decided to send an advisory for a package, or when we, by our rules, do have to send one, we'll create a request in this tool. And then someone goes ahead and files the actual draft for the advisory. After that, we get 2 reviews that you need from other security members, and they're checking references, spelling, package version. So it's important that, of course, you put the correct version here. And just double checking things. And after that, you get your Gentoo announce email or RSS feed update, or you get your entry in the user checking tool for how your packages are. This sentence doesn't make any sense. So at the end, you get either your Gentoo announce email, you get your update on the Gentoo website and the forums, or you get an entry into GLSA-check, which is the tool for checking your system's packages' integrity. Yeah. How this works is you get GLSA-check as part of the Gentoo kit, and you can get it to list, which is the -L mode, affected advisory, or the packages that your system is, the affected packages, no, my English really sucks. you get a list of packages affected by advisories. There we go. Or affected by issues that we have. No, let's not talk about this. So you can see here we have 3 packages here that have an advisory out by us that are not in the unaffected state. So we have in the advisory version, we say def-lang PHP version 5.4.1 has an issue and 5.4.2 is fixed. As you can see on the list here, it's obviously not fixed, it's red, it's bad. You can then check how are you going to resolve the issue. GLSA-check tells you then with the -p, which is pretend, it tells you what would you need to update. In this case, you'd get the 1.2.1 of libjbig turbo and the 5.11 of file. And if there was a case where we couldn't provide an update, where we had to say, okay, we've ceased support for the package, there is no more upstream, there is no fix, you have to uninstall it, that's where you get the no upgrade path exists for these packages information. So what you would need to do is update libjbig turbo and file and remove PHP. There's a possibility to get more information on an advisory. For instance, when you want to confirm that when we don't have an upgrade path that you really need to unmerge it, you can take the advisory number and use it with the -d, which is dump command, and you get the information on the resolution. When we say we discontinued support for the package, we recommend you that you unmerge it and give you the command for that. So GLSA-check covers packages, and this is just a reactive method of dealing with security issues. A more proactive thing is the Gentoo harden project, which by itself would fill another 2 or 3 talks, I think. So I'm just going to mention it and leave it as an exercise to you to get more information. The Gentoo harden project allows you to get a set of security enhancements to kernel and tool chain that are layered in a fashion that you can increase the ability of your system to not be susceptible to certain kinds of attacks. So you have things like stack smashing protection, you have things like randomized address spaces that make exploits inert or even unusable sometimes. You can check the harden project at harden.gentoo.org for more information. Another tool that we have currently in development is glsa-check, which is developed up to a certain point, but sadly not continued. I've also tried to have this as a Google Summer of Code project, but sadly we didn't find any good students for that. What glsa-check does is it checks your running kernel against a list of known vulnerabilities in the kernel on our Bugzilla, where we tag each vulnerability with this is kernel version 3.1. whatever, but it's fixed in the Gentoo patches, this and that version, and so on. If you want to work on this or know somebody who wants maybe a GSOC project next year, would be glad to have someone on that. Also, security has had an auditing sub-project for a few years now. Sadly, also a bit inactive, but recently we've got a new staff member, Jason, who's been actively looking for issues, for instance, in the kernel, and also has found issues in the kernel, and he'll be joining the Gentoo security team, actively auditing software and services we provide. Okay, so we now know how to keep your system safe, how to keep updated on advisories we send, what other things there are. What are we as the security team going to do in the future? The first thing that I already mentioned is getting CVE compatible. This means that we have, for each and every advisory we send, a link to CVE. We give you a possibility to look up CVEs that affect Gentoo, see what packages in specific these CVEs affect, and some other information. So this is a long-term goal that we're hoping to achieve in the near future. Second goal we have is getting a new advisory format out. Currently we have many predefined fields in our advisories. We have a summary, we have a synopsis, we have a description of the vulnerability, we have impact information, we have resolution information, and sometimes you have duplicated information in that, and we just want to make things as dense and as easily draftable and writable and with as few mistakes as possible. So we're looking to cut down the length of the advisories, while of course not losing too much detail. And something else that we want to implement is slot support, because currently when you have an advisory, for instance, for Java, and you have the 1.5 branch, like Java 5 or Java 6, 1.6, then we would always have to update an advisory after new 1.5 releases have been released. So that is a bit of hassle for you, because in the meantime, when we had the new 1.5 release, and between the release and us updating the advisory, GLSA-check would say, hey, your 1.5.38 is vulnerable, when it was already fixed in 1.5.30 or whatever. So this is the upcoming GLSA format change. And together with that, we'd like to redo our security web presence, which should improve on getting better synergies from the data that we now collect. So we can map CVEs to packages to GLSAs and look for specific things. This is also part of getting CV compatible and important for that. And what we're also missing right now is you don't really get a notification for issues that are decided to be no GLSA. So this is the bottom margin of the importance scale. And we do not have an information service for those yet. You could subscribe to our Bugzilla account, but you would get a lot of email, and this is not really nice, so we're looking into fixing that. All right, that's about it. If you want to see any of the tools I showed you or anything else live, please ask me. I'll be around. If you have any questions, security@gentoo.org, especially if you want to help. You can always file bugs for things you have discovered, for things you've heard about, you think need fixing. You can also help wrangle the bugs, which is a really tedious task, but gets fun at times. And of course, help draft and release advisories. So please contact us, security@gentoo.org, or talk to me after this talk. Also, one thing before I finally shut up. We have some merchandise, and as I'm with the German Gentoo e.V. Association who produced it, I'd like to inform you that we have these wonderful mugs for sale at the Gentoo booth just outside on the left. The price is €5 or 130 kronen, so if you want one, come by. So if you have any questions, feel free.
So you mentioned that, okay, you have certain goals with regards to, or depending on the how severe the security problem is. What I'm wondering is, does commonality of the package affect those goals? Let's say denial of service in Xorg is probably going to be a little bit different than denial of service in Apache, or I don't know, something else. Does it affect?
It does affect, I mean, both. If you take the Apache and Xorg example, these packages are both common, so they would both get an advisory. But if you have to say a server service versus something a user runs or a client, then we probably wouldn't provide an advisory. What we don't do right now is, if we have a user-assisted denial of service, for instance, you open a link in Firefox and it crashes your browser, we're not sending an advisory. If it doesn't execute code, then it's not worthy an advisory, because you fixed this issue by not visiting that page again until it is fixed. As simple as that. Anything else?
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you for the wonderful merchandising tools to our booth.